Our church, and many of you know this already, but our church focuses on the entertainment industry and the poor especially. And so one of our teams right now is down in Ecuador, where we helped write the official policy for their first ever policy against human trafficking. And it was approved in May. And then just this week, we were in an apostolic meeting, and Jennifer Toledo was leading a team to 200 of the top police chiefs in Quito, but that represent the national police force, to train them about how to look for human trafficking and what to do when you find it, which is just amazing. And one of my favorite things they did on their trip while they've been there, I think they just did it last night if I remember right, is they had some 5-star chefs come down and cook an amazing 5-star meal for all these prostitutes. And so I think they had 70 prostitutes or so, and they cooked this incredible meal, and they just treated them like queens, which they deserve to be treated with that kind of respect and love. And so just so cool. So I love our team. I love our family. I love what happens in this whole network of churches, because we're bringing honor back, and that's just an awesome thing. When the world feels honored by us, they're going to come and ask us for all our wisdom and all of our life, and I'm excited about that. I've been not with you as much as I should have in this conference, because we have our family in town, and then also I'm finishing a book project on I'm not teaching it tonight, but on the very thing I'm just demonstrating on the prophetic. And I believe that God is causing us to be translation devices of his heart. And I think, the book is called Translating God. And I think it's a really exciting subject, because we've had the prophetic installed in the world for a while now, for thousands of years. But there's a generation right now who, I just was at the Bethel teen camp. Those of you who know who Bill Johnson, who was here, I went and did his youth camp. I haven't done a youth camp in years, and they asked me to come. And I was like, sure, I'll do your youth camp. You guys are radical. We'll see what happens. And I went up there, and I released words of knowledge and prophetic words. And I said, now it's your turn. You guys are going to do it. So one of the little girls, who's only 12, if my 12-year-old girl, I don't have a 12-year-old, but she's 2. If she was 12 and she did this, I would be like, that's my girl. She's going for it. But she goes up and she's practicing, and I said, take risks, you guys, take risks. And she tells another little girl who's 13 or 14, I think she was 14 actually, she says, you're going to receive the most important phone call of your life today. The Lord just told me that. That's a risk. They're up in a camp. I didn't even have cell phone service. I mean, it was out in the mountains. I was like, good luck. I can't even call my wife right now. I was going, can you hear me now? It wasn't working. And so the little girl later on that day, and I didn't hear when the word was originally given, they were in a small team. Later on the day, we had testimony time from it, and the other little girl gets up, and she says, my mom abandoned my family 7 years ago. She's been in rehab for 18 months, and my dad allowed her to call me, but I didn't know she was even in rehab or that she was coming back, but he allowed her to call me. I just got the call an hour ago, and starts bawling and says, I'm having a restoration. My family, she's coming home. And we're like, so if 12-year-olds can take some deep risks, you can too. And the only thing that is setting, I think, my gifting apart is that, and my friend Shawn was talking to me today and was asking me some questions like, what do you do with all the stuff that's really risky and hard? And I say, I usually start with that, and it flops a lot. And I start with that with unbelievers. I start with that with people behind the scenes. I've been in casinos and in clubs and in all kinds of places in the last year that I literally start with the riskiest thing. And a lot of times it doesn't happen. So then I have to have enough emotional awareness and I can't take myself too seriously where I go, oh, that was kind of fun that I tried that, huh? Too bad it didn't work. Let's try again. Can I try again? Can I do a do-over? And people are just really gracious, because people, one, are intrigued that we're Christians and we're trying to be connected to God that way. And they don't expect perfection because they know we're humans too. And number 2, if God does show up, they'll forget everything you said that wasn't connected. They'll just forget it. I mean, it happens all the time to me. They totally forget it. I went up to a mom in the grocery store the other day, and I said, hey, is there someone in your life named Mary Jean? And because I was just listening to Billie Jean, and I heard Mary Jean in my head. And Mary Jean is, for whatever reason, Mary instead of Billy. And she goes, no. I go, I'm so sorry. I know it's random. She was like, do you know my kids from school? Are you a parent? And I go, no, I'm just a weird Christian. I started laughing, and I said, I'm honestly just shopping, but I thought that I heard God's heart for you. And I thought there was something about Mary Jane. She's like, oh, that's really neat. Almost like, that's cool. And then it got awkward because we didn't know what to do next. I'm like, thanks, we'll see you later. Well, then I ran back into her, and she didn't run away from me. I would have been like, there's that weird person, But she didn't run away. So I ran back into her, and I was like, can I ask you another question? She's like, sure, why not? At this point, we're friends, right? I said, is your daughter, she had a little stroller too, or no, she had her daughter in her cart, that's what it was. And I said, is your little daughter, is she having a hard time developing speech? How do you know this? I was like, yes, she forgot about Mary Jean. I forgot about Mary Jean until tonight when I'm telling you the story. But I prayed for her little daughter, and she was, that's what's the most precious thing in her heart, the concern of her heart. To know that God cares about the concern of her heart and that a complete stranger came up to her, it doesn't matter when we're wrong, it matters how much we love. And so I just want to just set that as a foundation tonight, mostly to protect me, so if I fail miserably, you'll still love. I'm just kidding. I'm not worried about performance, but you know how it is. So as being a missionary in the entertainment industry, I have a terrible job sometimes. Like this year, I had to go to Blizzard Entertainment and visit the video game campus, and I had to go to Avengers premiere with all the stars. It was really hard. Really hard. Oh, I had to go to dinner with some people that are so amazing at 2-star and 3-star Michelin restaurants. It was so hard this year, you guys. I'm so sorry for giving you this hard report about what it's like being a missionary in the entertainment industry. It's so funny though, because just several years ago, before I was married, we were going to a lot of just third world crazy places, and our team still does. I haven't gone outside of, I've had malaria 7 times, so I'm being really careful where I go to. If it has malaria, I'm not going, just because I don't want to get sick again right now. And so that tells you, if I've had malaria 7 times, I've been to some places. I've been to some slums. I've been to some really crazy places. And so the whole time I've been married and engaged, I've only gone to like Western red light districts and places like that. I haven't gone to Crazy Town right now. And so it's been kind of fun, but I used to go to like the craziest places in the world. Like I'd be in the worst slum in a country and then be with like the vice president the next day at like the nicest hotel, eating the nicest food. And I was like, I like my life, but it's so bipolar. And it's such a picture of where God's bringing the church, because he's going to give us influence in both places, but we have to learn how to love. And so that's just been kind of like our church is a reflection of that. We have a lot of weird influence, and yet we are just immature and growing at the same time. And I think that represents even where the church is at, at large, is that we have a lot of weird influence, but we're still growing in love to where we're going to have full influence, and that's going to happen soon. So that's all my introduction. I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks, and I'm so glad that Dad Bod is in, because I have Dad Bod. I don't know if you've read those articles online, but Dad Bod is the new thing. You have a little bit here, but it's okay, because for some reason women have enough daddy issues to where they like Dad Bod. And so I'm going to be in. This was on MTV.com. This was in like major, fashion magazines, that if you have a body of a father, I don't know what that means. I just feel better about going to the beach. So pray for me on vacation. Here, let me get to the message, and then we'll get into the ministry. My message is super simple, and I'm known as a very positive person, and I actually have to labor over that. So I'm going to give you the secret of my heart, is that I'm positive, and I try to do good, and I have to work on it. So behind the scenes, sometimes I have to work myself into that place, which is a spiritual place. I don't start there. My wife, this is going to be really controversial here, but my wife goes, if people knew that you were such a spiritual a-hole sometimes, they may not come to your conferences. And she doesn't mean to her, she just means like I look at things and I get offended, and then I have to work myself into love with the things I'm seeing. If I turn on Christian TV, I start to get so angry. It violates my heart culture like 90% of the time. And I have to come to a place where I go, oh, I do love this. Oh yeah, this is mine. This is me. It's not us and them. This is part of me. These are sometimes my weird cousins, but they're my cousins. They're my family. And so I have to bring myself into a place of not only accepting all things, but actually owning other things in Christianity that I don't think are the best representation of God's heart, but I'm not the judge and jury. So I have to come out of a place of cynicism and criticalness. And to not do that in the church means that if you're not doing it here, you're definitely not doing it out there, which means that when you watch reality television, you're noticing what people are wearing and how they are wearing it stupidly, or you're noticing Trump and what he's saying in the Republican Party right now and going, are you serious? You're noticing things that are crazy more than you're noticing what God's doing. And there's a discipleship that only happens in ourselves with God. It's the 1 John 2:20 anointing that he sent his Holy Spirit, and it's an anointing to teach us all things. We don't need any man to teach us this. And when we're dealing with these kinds of things that he's teaching us, a lot of people get weird. They become crazy prophetic folk outside the church going, I don't need any man to teach me. God teaches me. No. What Paul is talking about is that it's that place, it's John, sorry. I just said 1 John. What John's talking about is that place of character where you're so in line with his heart that you're discipling yourself. So when there's that flesh man that comes up and judges and is cynical and is critical and has good discernment, meaning real discernment, but isn't taking it all the way to the cross and redemption, then you actually disciple yourself into the good place of goodness of God's heart. And if you don't do that, nobody will do that for you. Nobody can impart goodness to you. Nobody can make good choices for you. As long as people are making good choices for you, that's as long as you'll have grace on your life. As soon as you leave that structure where you make good choices because they make good choices, like my pastor really likes this, so we're going to like this. You're only under that grace as long as you're under that structure. But God is wanting us to disciple ourselves because there's a good report right now. No one liked that point. There's a good report right now. There's so much good happening. You know what the church's responsibility is? To be the eyes on what God's doing so we can give the good report. Where everyone else is telling you what's not happening, what man's not doing, what Satan is doing, what cults are doing, we're supposed to stand in the midst of that and go, we're higher than that report. We actually see things and we're not just putting positivity spins on it like politics does. Well, it'll be okay because this, we're looking at it and going, there actually is no resolution unless God comes, but guess what? He's going to come. And he loves civil rights more than you do. Like, he loves these things more than you do. And there's people out there who are looking for the response of God in his people, and our response is, oh, I hate Obama too. Our response is, they're doing nothing good for the country. Oh, I don't like that celebrity either. She dresses slutty. That's terrible. She's totally corrupting America right now. Our response is to bring agreement to what the enemy's saying, the accuser of the brethren is saying against all the people on the earth, which technically are our brothers and sisters. When I was little, if anybody talked about my sisters, I would have a hard time with that. And things might happen. When's the last time you protected somebody as a Christian who deserves a bad report if you don't see with God's eyes? The world's waiting for us to stand up and advocate for what true spiritual justice is. When we go into red light districts, a lot of prostitutes really do want to be there, and they weren't trafficked in. They made that choice. So do we say, man, what a bad choice. They're not good at making good life choices. I guess they're stuck. No, because what we go in with is the hope that there was a higher quality of life because God the Father had an original plan for you to thrive. And he's always waiting to recreate the fullness of destiny for you. So when I show up, I want you to see his reflection of his eyes of love towards you in my eyes. And anytime that I put something else in my mouth towards you, I'm defeating my ability to love you or to love you for him. I've mentioned this before, but at the prophetic conference, if you were here, but I went to a conference. And I was so excited because it was a very internationally well-known speaker, like one of the biggest kind of known people I've been around in the church that I really respect. And I wanted to be, because I got green room access and stuff, I wanted to go early so I could actually meet them and just see them because I really respect this person, still respect this person. And I say that because something happened. And I was with, that night before I went, I was with the entertainment manager who had just gotten saved not too long ago. And he was telling me how he went to this major pop star's concert who he used to help manage a little bit. And it was his first time back after a year of kind of getting off drugs and out of that crazy lifestyle. And so I wanted to go back just to show, I'm not disconnecting from you guys. I'm disconnecting from the patterns that are around these worlds. So but I love you. You're worthy. So he wanted to go back and just kind of put I love you guys. Hey, I'm still here. You're so important to me. So he went, and when he got there were some people, of course, kind of partying in the back stage area, and he went and sat down with some old friends and was just kind of talking to him real briefly because those talks, because sometimes can last 20 seconds, sometimes can last 15 minutes. But the pop star, she came out of her dressing room and she goes, why aren't you doing stuff over there? What's going on? And she's like, come on, go get some stuff. He's like, oh, I don't need anything. And if you don't know what all that is, you're innocent and stay that way. And so she goes, He goes, I'm not doing that stuff. She's like, I know you. You do that stuff. Well, what's going on? And he goes, this is going to sound so cliche, but I found Jesus. And he's really good. And like, I'm not even, that's not even my world anymore. She goes, oh my gosh, I've known you for years. Sit down with me. You have to tell me the whole story because I'll trust it coming from you. So he sits down with her and he tells her the story and they both cry. And she goes, can you pray for me? I'm not ready to make the decision for Christ, but this is the most real spiritual journey I've ever heard in my life. So he prays with her, and it's just so, and so he tells me, and I'm getting tears in my eyes. I'm like going, yeah, this is the best. This is what we're believing for, these kinds of seeds that may not even pay off in a way that we see in this lifetime, but those are those moments that are so valuable. So I go to this, big, huge preacher who we all love, who all of you would be like, they're awesome, or the most of you would, because some of you have criticalness that you need to work through, like I talked about earlier. But I get there. You can do it, though. I've done it. You can do it, too. I've been exposed to a lot of Christian darkness, and I've overcome. You can, too. That should be on my tombstone. So he's teaching this message, and I love the message. It's super great. And then he goes, and he brings up this pop star by name, and he just starts ranting. Now, this is somebody that has hundreds of thousands of followers, if not millions, on Twitter. The world follows this person's Christian voice. And he's just talking about this pop star as if she would never hear. Because in his mind, it's so separate. In his mind, and I hear the Lord, many of you have heard me say this phrase before, and it's becoming like, I don't want it to become just a cliche, I want it to go into our hearts, which is, the Lord spoke to me and said, you'll never have authority over the people you don't love. And what he doesn't realize is that I could give him a voice to her, and her heart might change. Because it just happened through one of your friends. It's going to happen, and the network of connections you're around, if you start to slander people, they don't want to listen to you because they don't feel safe with you. And if you're not bringing a good report, but you're bringing a bad report to them, they shut down their hearts and their ears. Because what happens when somebody comes to you and says, like I was working with your friend and blah, 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 you usually will side with your friend, not with that person. When you hear a bad report, you usually will side with the person who you love the most. And so when people hear a bad report about themselves, they'll shut down their heart towards you, and then they'll look for who they should align their heart, who's going to affirm them. And usually where they look is the wrong place. I remember Lou Engle, who I love, I see Therese over there. Lou Engle gave this word years ago, and he said there's two people crying out for this generation right now. And if we don't rise up in the spirit of Esther, there's the Salome who's crying out for the heads of the God's anointed that's trying to cut off what God wants to do. And there's two people, crying out before the king. And I just feel like there's been this whole area that we haven't occupied called the good report. And the world's looking for the right report. They're looking for the right report in science and technology. They're looking for the right report in education because we have all kinds of wrong reports, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on wrong reports. We and our water in Los Angeles are a picture of that, or California are a picture of that. It's all bureaucracy. This is a political drought. This is not a natural drought. Yes, we have natural drought. We've always had natural drought. It's a political drought. UC Berkeley put out a report that they said we can solve the problem for the next 100 years for $500 million. Guess how much they spent last year just on planning for the water department? $500 million. That was no implementation. So they said for $500 million, we can desalinate the water. It will not affect the environment. This is what we can do, just like what Israel's doing. And they can't do it, though, because they have agreements and all these bureaucracy and protocol and stuff with unions and all these things, and it would dismantle all of that. So they have to just be stuck in the problem. So basically, there's some Christians who are working in the water department who are asking God, Lord, show us what wisdom looks like, because if we can give a plan that simplifies this really complex issue, then you will look like God to the water department and to the state of California. So they're asking God, and I'm like going, that's worthy of prayer, because they want to give a good report and a right report of what can happen that doesn't just dismantle a bunch of people, but actually puts the right balance on the whole thing. And I feel like for a Californian, and those of you who aren't from here, which is a lot of you, picture how many people, because if you water past 9 a.m., you get in trouble. You get penalized for watering your lawn past 9 a.m. And if you water too much, more than 35 gallons a person, pretty much you start to come into penalties, and so you pay a higher rate for your water. I mean, none of you who are not from California have to deal with this probably. Like you can, fill up your kids' pool and not think about it, but we have to fill up our kids' pool and go, we might get in trouble. This might cost me more than, it should. So think about the Californians who are bitter and jaded, and all they can say is when you talk to your friends in California, is, I hate the drought, I hate this thing, and they have no positivity or no positive viewpoint of what could happen because they're stuck in a bad report of a perpetual political cycle that's only gotten worse. Now multiply that by 1 million issues where people's lives are on the line. We have a couple blocks in downtown MacArthur Park in Los Angeles that's the most densely populated area west of the Mississippi. Over 275,000 people live in 3 blocks. It's crazy, and there's more even right around there. And so when you go down there, it's mostly undocumented people. It's just it's like the third world. I don't know if some of you guys, I don't know if from LA, if you've been down there after 6 o'clock at night, but it's just like any third world country. They start putting out the blankets and selling everything you could think of, and they cook things on their shopping carts. They take shopping carts and they turn them into barbecues, just like a third world country. It's the exact same. We have that. So we have issues where there's undocumented people who are living in utter poverty right here in Los Angeles. It's the same statistical poverty that you get to in Mexico City. The same kind of poverty on a little lower scale, but it's the same kind of poverty. There's nowhere else in America that has poverty like that. That's a third world issue poverty because of undocumentation. So there's people who are like our people at Union City Mission who are amazing people. There's people that, the police department, the police chiefs who are over that area that are crying out for what is a good report. Because this whole world, when you start to look at the issues that are facing this world, they are giants. But when you start to look at the church, you can't even tell which side the church is on. Are they standing on this side going, yeah, the drought sucks? Right? Or are they going, I'm kind of standing in the middle here. Like, it kind of sucks, but I feel like God's going to do something. Or are they going, God, you have a plan. You have a master craftsman plan, and I'm part of the solution, even if it's only standing in prayer that there's a plan coming. Maybe that's all I can do. Let me just read this to you. Philippians 4, verse 6, you'll love this. Don't fret or worry. Instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for the good, will come up and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry in the center of your life. How many of you are doing that over the next elections for America? I'm worried, I'm scared. Hillary, Trump, Some of you are like in crazy town in your mind over the elections, and you don't even know how it'll affect you, But what if you allow that worry, because you don't have voice for what you're even afraid for, so you allow that worry to turn to a place of praise and prayer, where you just go, wait, you're bigger, you're on the throne, you're huge, you care way more than I do about this. I'm not going to be passive with this. And that's the killer of the church, is that we're passive. I'm actually going to turn this worry into a place where your wholeness permeates my inner being. So when people feel me and ask me about the issue, I may not have the right answer yet, but I have the God of wisdom living in me who does. And they can feel it even if I don't have answers. They can feel like, do you know what happens like when you have little kids in the house and you're fighting all the time and you start to go, and finances are terrible, and you have a 7-year-old who's going, my birthday's coming up, I'll tell them I don't need presents. Because you're fighting and they have financial instability. But when you're good parents, you don't let them know there's financial instability at 7. In their world, you're going to do everything you can within the means that you have to make their life good, because they're not part of the problem and they can't solve the problem, so you're protecting them from the problem. Well, the problem is so many of us have not protected the world from the problem. We're the fathers and mothers of the kingdom of God. And we're called to come in and say, you know what? When a parent comes in and you hear it over here, like I'd overhear my parents every once in a while, like, oh, finances are really hard. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, you guys, that finances are hard. And they go, no, it's okay. We'll be good in the big picture. And when your parent says that, you're like, oh, thank God. We don't have to go on welfare, The world needs to hear that from you. They don't just need to hear the black and white, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. They need to hear that it's going to be okay. But they need to hear that from people who have authority in their love, that aren't bringing bad reports constantly, who aren't in alignment with all the political spirit that's in the world right now, who don't have a religious edge that says, well, before this gets good, everyone has to become holy, which has never happened in history. Thank God Jesus didn't come when they were all holy, or else we'd be in huge trouble. Let me read the next verse. We're almost done. Summing it all, this is verse 8 in Philippians 4. Summing it all up, my friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse. Put into practice what you learned from me and what you heard and saw and realized. Do that, and God makes everything working together for in your most excellent harmonies. So there's a key to that. We always say God works everything to your good. He doesn't unless you put your mind and your spirit into a place of focus. Because even when he's working it for your good, you won't see it when you have a negative critical mindset. You want a prophetic gift, you have to see out of his spirit, which is always good. The reason why the church doesn't have a prophetic spirit that's super profound right now, it's a little profound but not super profound, is because we have negativity. We've entertained a negative spirit. So we can't give a good report because we're saying, oh, you're a transvestite. Well, God can't touch you until you change that issue. You have to have your identity healed before God will use you or touch you. And he came to the Bible with some pretty crazy people. I mean, he had 2 liars sitting with him at the Last Supper. He looked at Peter and says, you're about to lie. And he looked at Judas and goes, you just lied. You're a serpent. I've been trying to fix you for 3 years. It's not working. Our leadership teams were like, if you're not in performance mode and looking good all the time, then you're in trouble. It's most of the Western church. I'm not saying that that's how leaders lead here, but that's most of the Western church, is that we have to have the appearance of holiness or else we're disqualified. So the problem is there's this gap between the reality and the vulnerability. And that's why we don't have the prophetic spirit, because in vulnerability, the prophetic spirit comes, and God's strength works everything to our good, because we start to see what's not, but we start to see who is. And we go, what's not is really small compared to holy, 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 holy. I mean, the angels haven't even made it all the way around the throne yet. He's so big. They just scream holy even bigger every time because they're like, you're so big, holy. Where's the end of this guy? I sat down with a billionaire this year, and he told me all the stuff he owns. He goes, oh yeah, I have an oil company in Ecuador, because they told me the thing in Ecuador. Oh yeah, I have a gold mine there. Oh yeah, I have this. And he went through and he named so many companies and properties and things that he owned that I was exhausted. I was exhausted. I was literally going, I can barely do one church and itinerant ministry and a family. And our little networks and stuff we lead. You know, I'm like, I remember Heidi Baker one time said, oh, we've planted, 20,000 churches. I feel like you need to plant more churches in LA. And I go, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. My one church in Hollywood is as big as 20,000 churches somewhere else. They are so high maintenance. I'm not hurting cats, I'm hurting tigers. They have claws and teeth. And she laughed, So he's telling me all the stuff that he owns. And I don't know why he did it. His friends around him said he never tells people this. We don't even know half the stuff he owns, And he just keeps going. We're like 15, 20 minutes in, and I'm exhausted. I'm like, how? This sounds like the worst thing in the world. And I'm in my heart, I'm like going, no wonder you're a billionaire, but this is exhausting. And I'm going, holy. He just wouldn't stop. And I'm like going, this is so huge. Like when God directs this, the flow of this resource, to where it goes, this is so huge. But this man has had the capacity to have, and I think of God who's had the capacity to look at every act of injustice and have a plan to correct every injustice with love. And the angels see that and they cry out, holy, holy. And our capacity is so small because our love isn't that big. It's true. The prophetic thing that's on my life, the only reason it came on me, I can promise you, the only reason it came on me is not because I'm a sovereign vessel. There was no star that appeared over my life when I was born. When I was in the Kansas City prophetic movement, everybody had an incredible prophetic story of how they were born or how God called them. They had angel visitations at 9. Their moms were healed of 1 million diseases while they were being born. Seriously, like this was the stories. And I came up and I'm like going, my parents used to ask me, what's God showing you? And that was my whole story. Which I thought, like kids who grow up in church and they want a really bad testimony. Like, I want to be saved from drugs or something. Like everyone else has this incredible testimony. Like they were living on the streets and then Jesus, that's what, I went through that in the prophetic. Like I was like, I need this incredible testimony of how my dad locked me in the basement and beat me up. And then Jesus would come and I'd play my guitar. I had none of that. My parents were like, we love you so much, son. How are you? What's God showing you? I came from a family of love, and the prophetic and everything in God works best in the nurturing environment of love. So the people who birthed the prophetic didn't always have that nurturing environment of love. And they were rare enigmas because they didn't have the environment that we have now, that we have allowance to now, that we have parents that are generationally showing now. But it wasn't birthed that way. And so there's a lot of dysfunction in the past, but God's cleaning it up fast because he wants to entrust you with supernatural signs that what we're doing now is baby stuff compared to what he's about to trust us with. And we're not afraid to take risks because we're not afraid of getting slapped or punished. You know, people ask me, this is the number one question, like, how do you know that you're going to be on? I'm like, I'm not always wrong, right. Sometimes I'm wrong. You know, even with the prophesying in the future, sometimes I'm wrong and I have to go take responsibility for that when it happens. But I'm not afraid of punishment. Because my motive is love. So if I have to go back and go, I'm really sorry, I'm okay with doing that. I remember one of the main prophets in the 90s, I was helping him with his ministry in Kansas City. And so he had some accountability to us. And I remember this family that he had called out the woman by name who had stage 4 cancer and told her she was going to be healed. They were amazing people who were plugged into their church, who were like lay pastors. And he called out all the kids' names and all kinds of things that they were going to do. Well, one of the sons was one of my best friends, and they lived in Oklahoma. Dallas. And they ended up, like, the mom died 6 weeks later. So I came to my prophetic friend and I said, hey, you know what? That situation, I was just doing pastoring work for the prophet people there. And so I said, hey, that word didn't work out. Do you mind calling her husband and just saying, I'm so sorry. I don't know why this word didn't connect. I'm really sorry that this didn't happen and we're all learning, aren't we? Can you just call her? He goes, why would I ever do that? They probably send her something. And I went, no, not on my watch. No, this isn't okay. You're going to stop what you're doing right now and you're going to call them. Like I literally got into boss management like, no, this is not an okay excuse. You're trying to protect your ministry and yourself. There's no protection needed. Everyone's okay with a little. He goes, I've never been wrong. And I went, and here's where I walk out the door. I'm not going to be in the same room as you because God might judge you. And I don't even believe in God judging people this way, but he might. Because I am. And we're in a different phase where we're looking at things going, it's not really about if we're right or wrong. It's about how many people connect to the love of God. If it's about souls, then it's not about us and our ministry. It's about them and their lives. And so when we get that adjustment, God trusts us with different prophetic power. And I was in another room with another set of billionaires. It's been weird. I've been with like poorest of the poor and then like with political leaders and celebrities and a lot of billionaires lately, which is crazy. There's a lot of saved billionaires. There's a lot of them. And the great wealth transfer has already happened. It's just a matter of God giving them the trust in their hearts to put it somewhere. Because there's enough people to build the church into the next 50 to 100 years into its fullness already saved. I found this out in the last 2 years. They're already there. But they don't trust you. So we got to pray that they start to trust and that their heart gets healed from financial wounds to the church because they have them. So I'm not saying everybody does, but the ones that I met with, for the most part, 2 out of 3 would. So I ended up going to a dinner, and this couple was sitting down for me in a very prestigious country, a very prestigious hotel in a country, and it's kind of a novelty to meet with the prophet guy. So that's how we got them hooked into come, and they're like business and building developers and whatever. So we're just having a good meal, and all of a sudden at one point, and we were laughing a lot. It was all social. There was no like spiritual God stories. It was just, I don't know how we got so social, but we were talking about kids and all kinds of stuff. And so the couple at one point made a statement of, well, like Jesus was a real historical figure, but the way people put an emphasis on how he's still alive, I mean, we know that's not true. Now, these are pillars of their church community, have built a multi-million-dollar church. They paid for the whole thing. And I'm looking at them like, you're billionaires, you paid for your church, you go every Sunday, and you don't believe in Jesus. Wow. And I didn't say any of that out loud. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying like with judgment. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, you guys are awful. I was thinking, that's amazing. Like that takes a lot of dedication to not do it out of passion. Like that, I could never do that. I would never give my money to something if I didn't have passion for it. Unless I had to obey God, unless he like spoke to me. But I mean, like this is like, we're living a good life and church is part of it type. That's part of our country club experience, And so I go, well, I don't know how to argue with you. I said, how many college degrees do you have? He had 2 PhDs and she has a PhD. And I go, I don't know how to argue with you because I think that's what you would want, is that you want to talk this through. And I don't think I could win because I think you're smarter than me. I said, but I sure do know about your 16-year-old daughter. And I start to prophesy about their daughter, her name, what she's going through, some things that are happening in their household, what they're concerned most about. They both start crying, and at the end of it, they forgot they didn't believe in Jesus. They were like, God's so good. I'm praying with them. I'm having them repeat kind of the salvation prayer just in case, And at the end, they're fine. Like at the end, they're like going, oh, Jesus is so good. He just touched me. And they're talking like this is their normal. After they confessed, they didn't believe Jesus was real for today. But you don't get into those environments because you're rich too necessarily, or because you have some sort of influence. You get into that environment because God's good. And because he can trust you with a good report, and he can trust you to not battle. He can trust you to not fight the minor fights. He can trust you to not look at where their heart condition is today, but where their heart's going to be in eternity if they get saved. See, so many of us treat people just a step past where they're at, and it's not enough. Nobody likes just an okay soccer coach. Everyone wants their kids to be with a champion soccer coach. And so if you come across going, I think your kid's okay, like they're fine. That parent is going to get you fired. Do you know what the term soccer mom, that came from soccer? Don't you know my kid? She's the best. She's going to make your team awesome. Like, you got to play her all the time. And the coach is like, oh my gosh, every mom's told me this on the entire team. And if the coach comes back and goes, your kid's actually not that good, you will get fired. And the church has to stop being this. Because the world's going, don't you see my project? I was anointed for this. And in Hollywood land, people tell me spiritual stories all the time. God sent me here. Jim Carrey stood up on the top of Hollywood Hill and screamed out to God and to the earth, is how he describes it. I will make $10 million of film. It is my destiny. He knew that part. What he didn't know is the God of love who was empowering him to do it. So when people come to you, are you like, oh, that's like nice selfish ambition? Or do you go, wow, that's redemptive? Let me read one more scripture. We're ending. Whoops. Galatians 5, and this is the Message Bible again. Verse 22, it says, he brings gifts into our life, much the same way as fruit appears in an orchard. And I want to go down a little bit into verse, I don't have the Bible open, I'm so sorry. It's just down a little ways. I didn't put what verse it is, but it says a sense of compassion in the heart, but in a conviction that a basic holiness permeates things and people, believing that God wants to talk to everyone, basically. There's a basic holiness permeating the world. And the church isn't acting that way. The church is acting like the world is completely evil and damned. But God so loved the world that he sent his very best. So we're supposed to feel like the world's not damned. You're actually supposed to act like the world is on its pathway to heaven, not on its pathway to hell. Like, we're supposed to have the opposite report. Like, you are good. Jesus spent time with all unsaved people, and his ministry was a complete unsuccess until after the cross, because they all denied him. But he treated them as though they were already those apostles. So he treated them with their eternal value, and he treated them like they were on their way to heaven, even the ones who didn't go. Because there were some people, I'm sure, who he said, God's building a mansion in heaven for you, and they didn't end up choosing him later on. I'm sure that happened. But he treated them with that kind of value because he could feel the Father's love, which is this holiness permeating over each individual, giving them a full invitation. And I love what I've seen when I've worked with drug addicts and prostitutes and just different people who, homeless people, that when you love them and you start to see them, as they fully are in God's heart, their full value, that can only be fully recognized in eternity anyways, that he creates a moment in their life, if they choose him, where he starts to recreate their potential and their possibility, even though their life should be over for some of the choices they've made. One of our friends is a prostitute for over 13 years who got married to a pastor. When she got saved, she had a full redemption, and it was like everything was back. Like, all of her innocence, all of her purity came back, and she married a virgin. That's crazy. I was like, how did that all work for you guys? She's like, he goes, well, I always wanted a woman who was experienced, who could teach me a lot, and she has. I mean, even in the fact that they could joke around and they're so in love. I mean, like, only God could recreate that destiny. But a lot of Christians who are working with, we can see it easily with the poor because it's easier because it's so black and white. They're working with somebody like that. They're just seeing a little bit of an upgrade for them. Like, maybe one day you'll get a job as doing nails, like Maybe someone will fall in love with you. We're just a bad coach. I have a positive spin in my heart because God is good. That's not what this is talking about. When we're saying God works all things for the good, if you focus on what's pure, noble, right, everything that he planned in the first place, you will start to see a quality of eternity in everything that's woven on the earth, and you will treat the earth with a different chord and a different note. And when you sing the world's song, everybody will follow. My worst enemy and the things that I'm moving into, I just have no enemies that affect me anymore. I have critics, I have people who are mean to me. My worst enemy is me. I've had some people who've done some really bad things to me. It's like really crappy stuff, but it doesn't even matter. I have so much good in my life, it doesn't matter. But man, I can screw it up real good. Even just by having a bad attitude. A bad attitude could be as bad as smoking pot. A bad attitude can be as bad as going and doing something in a massage parlor you shouldn't. It could be that detrimental to your heart. It could literally cut you off from a relationship you're supposed to create today, but you've stepped away from relationship because you've chosen a lesser attitude, and we just don't have the right to, not to stay there. It's the one thing that we all want God to just deliver us of. Lord, just deliver my heart of this religious spirit, God. Just take it away from me. He's like going, no, you empower yourself to look at what I'm doing. I've given you eyes to see. You're the only people group on the earth who have consistent eyes to see. Look, and look until it's so good you can't look away. So when other stuff comes into your viewpoint, you're like, that's such a lower report, that's ridiculous. We did that with Obama in the last, two seasons of his presidency, and we just kept looking at what God was doing. Doesn't mean we didn't see what Obama was doing in some areas. It doesn't mean we didn't see other stuff, but we chose to look and see what God was doing through him because God appoints leaders. And we've been consistent to look at him and go, okay, wow, he has been all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of good. I'm not going to go through it because you wouldn't believe me if you were against Obama anyways. But there's all kinds of good that happened. The news never reports good about anybody in political office, hardly at all. They barely ever do human good feature stories. And if you're a Republican, you are opposed to hate Democrats anyways. So you don't believe that anything good can come out of the Democratic Party. If you're a Democrat, same with Republicans. So if you're standing in heaven, which is not political, you can look at people and go, God, what is the value of what you've done through this person? And when you start to live out of that, you start to get favor with that. You live in a favor under the administration. I learned that because my friends in Cuba who are underground church leaders were doing it when Fidel Castro was in charge. And they said, God, show us how to come to agreement with who you are in Fidel and what you want to do through him. Even though he's done all this evil, let us celebrate what you are doing. And they came up with points that over 2,000 churches agreed with in prayer over Fidel in gratitude towards what God was doing while he was in office. If they can thank God for Fidel, I can thank God for Obama. So we've had some really fun favor with the White House at different times and with people in government because of our love, because we're not against them. And when you're not against somebody, like if we start speaking against North Korea, guess what will happen? We can't go there. You know what happens on everyone's Facebook page who says, I hate Kim Jong-un. You know what happens to them? They have people who search for that, and you are now an enemy of the state. So we're looking at it going, I actually love North Korea, and I love what God's going to do through the children of North Korea, and so I choose to love that dictator. I choose in my heart to love him. Do I love everything he does? No, that's not the point. Some of us don't know how to stand in the divine tension of God's love. He will not give you power if you do not love. You cannot love if it's about human sentiment. If you choose love based on what you have sentiment for, you'll never love well in the kingdom. How is he going to give you influence? You're going to learn how to look at people with such parental value that even the little kids who, they're little orphans in their hearts, that when you have to parent them for 15 minutes or for 5 hours or whatever, that you're spending time with them, you'll look at them and go, you know what? Everyone goes through a rebellious phase. Isn't that true? I went and met with the president of a South American country. I was at a meeting in Peru, and I was invited over to, or not Peru, I won't even tell you where because I don't want to give you a hint. But I was invited to meet with a very evil dictator who's dead now, very evil man. And this cousin, and also who was also his brother-in-law, controversial, asked me if I would go over to his camp, and he said, I want you to come meet my brother-in-law, who's the president of this country. And I didn't know anything about the country because I'm American. We don't know politics outside of America, so I didn't know anything. Like, I had no clue. So I went, it was that night, and it was only morning time. He's like, oh, you need to come meet with them. You come meet with them. And I'm like, okay, maybe, we'll see. And he goes, well, we'll take a helicopter ride. It'll be 30 minutes. I'll get you back in 2 hours, I think. So I asked the pastors I'm with, who is this guy? And they tell me he's like the most evil man. They're telling me all kinds of graphically awful stories about him, one after another. And I'm like, I'm not meeting with this guy. He'll probably kill me. Like, what a jerk. So I go and take a nap after the sessions, and I have a dream. And in the dream, he is, this dictator is like 12 years old, and he's in an orphanage in foster care, going in and out of foster care homes, which is a true thing that happened in his life to some degree. But it was boarding schools, but it was like really bad ones, and where he was abused and stuff. And then at the end of the dream, he was still 12 years old, and he became the leader of the orphanage. And I saw all these other orphans he's leading, and they're looking to him for advice. And I wake up, and the Lord said, can you father an orphan for 15 minutes? And they go, man, my heart connects to him so much differently when I see him as a 12-year-old who has an orphan spirit. You know, when you're dealing with little orphan Annie, it's not the same as dealing with huge, Saddam Hussein or whatever. It's like you're looking at him going, oh, or you look down and you go, oh. And it wasn't human sentimentality. He had to relate it to something I can relate to, which is, for me, it's orphans. So I decided to go. So I go there, and it was like, they were armed to the hilt. I'm showing up. I'm in I think I was in cargo shorts and a T-shirt. I was like so not ready for a president. And I get there, and I'm standing in front of him, and there's all these people in the room. They're all holding guns. There's 2 advisors behind him. His brother-in-law's next to me, and he goes, go. He looks at me and goes, go. He asked you to come. He speaks perfect English. Go. And I go, go what? Go where? Go. No, speak. Do your prayer thing. And he wanted me to, because he was just honoring his brother-in-law, who he owed a favor to, and his brother-in-law was using this for his favor. And I go, okay. And I said, well, I had a dream, and not the one I told you. I said I had a dream, and I had this weird thing happen. There's 5 words, and these 5 words, God is saying he will not be with you in this, and it'll work against you, and you'll be taken out of office if you do this thing. And he looks at me and goes, and the guys are like holding their guns, they're looking at me like really intense, like, you're gonna get killed. And so I say the 5 words, and they're all 5 different types of words. They don't relate to each other, so I don't know what I'm saying. And he goes, you, all get out, now, get out. And he has the 2 advisors, not even his brother-in-law, just one guy with a gun, 2 advisors, and me. Everyone else is out. He goes, how do you know this? I'm like, I am James Bond right now. This is amazing. And I go, I don't know this. I don't know anything. I don't even know what I've said. And he goes, that's an operation we were about to do against another country. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it. And he goes, I can't believe, you're saying God's not with me and that it'll ruin that means that we're going to lose. And I said, well, the other thing he told me to tell you is that he forgives you, and you don't need to ask him forgiveness anymore for what you did at your 8-year-old daughter's party to the horse. And I'm not going to tell you what happened, but it was really sad. And so he starts weeping uncontrollably, Hispanic man just weeping. And the 2 advisors are kind of like, looking around, like they don't know what to do. They're like, what do I do with my hands? I don't know. This is weird. We've never seen him cry before. He's weeping, and he goes, I ask God for forgiveness every day for what I did to my family, especially when my daughter was 8. And I go, well, he's saying he already forgave you. You need to stop asking him for forgiveness and start to look at what he does want to do, not look at what you've done wrong. And he goes, this is amazing. So I begin to pray for him. The Holy Spirit falls. He goes, I've never felt love like this. I've never felt God before. Hugs me, tries to give me this, cash, tons of cash. He's trying to, he's putting it in and I'm like, no, I came here for free. No, stop it. And he's just trying to shove it on me. And I'm going, no. And so I'm leaving as he's hugging me, and I'm pulling the money away and throwing it back in his office. And I get in the helicopter, I ride back over, and I knew I couldn't tell anybody this story ever until now he's dead, so I'm telling the story. And, I just think of what was Saddam Hussein's last days of his life after being prophesied to several times by Paul Cain. He was in a cave, hiding out, and he had nothing left. He's reduced to 0. What was he thinking about in those times? Because you think about the most precious things when you're in the worst part of your life. Did he remember the words of love from a prophet who was sent to him during a crisis? Did this this dictator from this country I was at, remember that moment of God's love before he died? Did he turn to Christ? Because I want him to be in heaven. I want to see him there. Not with a reduced reward, but I want to see him there for real, for real. So why will God send you? Because you have to realize, if you want prophetic power, you want supernatural power, It's a real simple equation. Love plus you equals prophetic power. That's it. The most simple, God so loved the world that he sent you. Put your name there now, not just Jesus's. If you'll put your name there and you'll truly love and you'll keep your perspective, you'll disciple your character to where your perspective will stay in that healthy place, that you are healthy for the world around you, that you're not struggling with their dishealth, but you're healthy for the world around you, then kings will come to the brightness of that health. And they'll ask you. Oh, that was it.